What about the 6 general principles? Can you explain what they are and what's going to be the impact of GDPR as a result?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just recap on the 6 principles. Basically, any organisation, business or individual, in order to comply with the GDPR, you must adopt 6 general principles of managing that data. Basically, the 6 key principles are that managing the data must be lawful and fair and transparent. So you must have a lawful reason for actually processing the data. It's got to be specific, legitimate. In other words, there must be an explicit purpose as to why you're actually handling that data. It's got to be adequate, but also relevant. So you shouldn't hold more data than you need. So it's got to be adequate for the purpose, relevant to that particular purpose. And as I say, no need to keep any superfluous data at all. Of course, it's got to be accurate and up to date as well, or else that can be challenged by a subject access request. If they feel it's not up to date or inaccurate in any way, that can be challenged as one of the individual's rights. Of course, it shouldn't be kept for any longer than necessary. So it's one thing being relevant and specific and so on and so forth. But if you just keep it longer than you need it, again, that's not really acceptable under GDPR. So that implies that businesses need to implement retention policies, specific dates and procedures about when they can destroy data. And of course, a key one is that it must be kept secure. So there are obligations on security measures to maintain the data, and that's particularly important now. And cyber security goes glove in hand really with data security. It must be remembered that. So those are the key 6 principles that must be adopted with GDPR. But I mean, it's not just about the principles and adopting them. The GDPR goes a little bit further now in terms of its accountability principle. It's always been there, accountability and transparency in the current Data Protection Act. But now the Act it explicitly says that you've got to demonstrate that you meet these requirements. So it's not good enough just say, oh yeah, we adopt them, and you might adopt them in practice, but you actually got to demonstrate that. Now that means, and it goes throughout the GDPR actually, documentation is key. Sadly, in some ways, it always seems there's more and more bureaucracy, but it is important that you can demonstrate if the supervisory authority, the Information Commissioner's officer, or if there's a dispute or anything, you must be able to show that you had adequate systems and you were meeting those 6 principles. So how do businesses demonstrate that? Well, they're obliged now to put in place technical and organisational measures that will demonstrate that. What does that mean? Well, technical measures obviously are security measures that demonstrably are in place and can be tested, but also the organisational structures. So you need procedures, you need to have a training program, it might be, or HR manuals, staff manuals that actually explain to the business and the employees, the wider business, just what GDPR is and just what their obligations are under the business. So got to have those structures in place.
And I can see also how it's not just a piece of paper which you can just sort of file. If it's going across the organisation and the entity, then that means, you sort of mentioned training programs, you can't just get away with doing nothing.
You can't get away with doing nothing. I mean, and to be honest, the GDPR talks about, well, there's a couple of things really. It talks about having an auditable process, so it actually talks about internal audits of your procedures and processes. Right. They very much want to make GDPR a board issue. It's that important to individuals for their privacy of their data and the businesses to comply with that. So it's a board issue. And in fact, as part of the organisational and technical structures that they must implement, in many instances, the GDPR will now oblige companies to formally appoint a data protection officer, right, who of course would oversee all these technical and organisational structures and possibly be even part of the compliance arrangements of auditing it and reporting directly to a board about how those organisational and technical measures are operating in practice.
Thanks very much.